Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with a brand new movie review, and today we're discussing a film that I know I was excited for. I know a lot of you all were looking forward to it. We're talking about the one, the only, Mortal Kombat, ladies and gentlemen. Got a chance to check it out, and I'm really excited to let you all know my pros, my cons. Do I want to see more from this franchise? But more importantly, should you be excited for? We're going to talk about it all in this spoiler-free review, but before we dive into it, make sure you all are following me on all my other social media accounts. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you can get the alert from when I drop new reviews. It would mean a lot to me if you all can like and share this review. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate all the support. And in the comments below, let me know a couple things. Number one, were you looking forward to this film? Did you grow up with this franchise, video games and movies? Are you someone that appreciated this more than the 90s version? Do you want to see more from this franchise? What were some of your favorite moments, your favorite fights, your favorite character? Let's discuss it all in the comments below. So, look, just like you, probably 99% of you all that were excited for this film, I grew up with the franchise, played the video games. I'm decent at Mortal Kombat. You know, I'm not the greatest, but I'm also not that bad. Played the game, saw the movies, saw that trailer last year, because I'm not going to lie, I wasn't excited when I heard the announcement for it, but then James Wan attaches himself. There's a bigger budget. You see the behind the scenes and the actors they bring on. You're like, okay, this might be something special. And then they gave you that trailer, that red band trailer we got last year. I was sold. Here we are discussing it. Starting off my positives. Look, there are things I enjoyed about this film, characters I enjoyed. There are things that get me excited to see what they can do next, but I'm not going to lie, I'm going to talk about it more in my criticisms, but there are chunks of the film and characters in the film in the script that we'll talk about a little bit later, but we're talking positives, ladies and gentlemen, and there are some things to take away from this film. Number one, it is a video game movie done in the best way and in the worst way possible at times, but in the best way. The film is self-aware. As advertised, it's brutal. It has some incredible fatalities. It's bloody. There's some great one-liners. For my video game fans out there, there are definitely a lot of Easter eggs and nods to the video games and to the characteristics from the video game, so I really appreciated the attention to detail, the serious nature to when the film was serious, and also the goofy nature for certain characters like Kano, who we'll talk about here in a bit. So there are some really good things to take away from it. I've seen a couple of my friends that have seen the film. They use the word fun. It's silly, dumb action, which it plays to that narrative. And sometimes I think people use that as an excuse, like shutting your brain off and just enjoying it. Sometimes you want to have a little bit more meat to your stories, but the film at its core, it's having fun with itself, at the same time setting itself up for maybe more films to come in the future. So there are some things to take away from appreciating what came before it and paying homage to those that have grown up with IP to really enjoying what they're seeing. But let's kind of transition into some things that really did work for me. There were certain characters that I really had a good time with and wish they were maybe involved a little bit more in the script, and also parts of the film which I thought were really well done, which, going off of that point, the opening, you know, it's public knowledge. They released the first 7 minutes of the film online. That brutal nature of the opening of the rivalry between Sub-Zero, who was someone I really enjoyed playing with in the video games. My favorite character growing up was Scorpion. Seeing them go head to head, again, the lore, the mythology, the hatred between those two, I thought that was going to be, honestly, the rest of the film in that tone. Unfortunately, the film kind of diverts from the serious nature of what goes on in the first 7 minutes, but it's in those first 7 minutes that I wish the film would have focused more on Sub-Zero, on Scorpion. I know we got the animated film last year, so they didn't want to repeat what came out before it, but I wish we would have spent more time in that beef and that rivalry between the two. But when we do see those two on screen, they're the best parts of the film, especially when they fight, and they have the best fights. And I say fights plural in the film. It's when the film is at its best. It's when it's at its absolute peak. I thought the choreography, the tension, the stakes were all there when those two were on screen together. But individually speaking, again, Scorpion is not in the film. This isn't much of a surprise. He's not in the film as much as I would have liked him to be, but when he is on screen, he's fantastic. He's my favorite character in the video games. And then Sub-Zero, menacing is the word of the day, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to describing Sub-Zero. This man is on a mission. He's a Terminator. He is killing anyone and everyone that stands in his way in his mission in this film. And I thought Sub-Zero brought the seriousness, the menacing nature, the villainous nature to the character, and I thought that he was fantastic. And then I would say my third favorite character in the film, this is coming to a surprise, because I am not a fan of this character of the video games at all, Kano, I was surprised how much I enjoyed that character. I knew from the trailer and the behind the scenes that the actor was going to be kind of the levity and the kind of the funny character, the one-liners, the video game nature characters come to life, and some of it didn't work. The majority of it worked for me, and particularly in the joking category. I thought Kano was pretty charming, pretty charismatic. He got on the nerves of the characters, which he was supposed to do. He plays both sides of the fences. So again, Scorpion and Sub-Zero were like up here, but Kano, man, I was very surprised by how much I enjoyed that character, and I wish I could have said more about the other characters, but I will say, even though they weren't given the most screen time and they weren't given the most to do, I do have to say that I did enjoy Liu Kang. I wish he was involved in the story more. I thought that he had some really cool moments. Out of all the characters he had besides Scorpion, he had a particular storyline and he was on a path to get redemption for certain things that happens to him in the film. So I really enjoyed Liu Kang in this film. And again, I wish there was more of that character. And then there's another character that, again, was not given the most, but did the best that he could in the role. That is Kung Lao. Again, he has one of the brutal fight sequences in this film, one of the best fatalities. That's something that's online as well. But I thought those characters, again, they didn't get the most to do, but when they were on screen, they did a pretty good job. I'll talk about the rest of the characters a little bit later, but again, wrapping up my positives, there were some good things to take away from the film. It's fun when it needs to be fun. It's serious when it needs to be serious. They kind of blur the line sometimes. It doesn't always mix well, but those are the things I took away from the film as far as positives. Transitioning into my criticisms with this film, this doesn't unfortunately push the narrative forward in regards to video game movies. This is a video game movie, and sometimes video games do not always translate well to the big screen. I felt like the writer and the director, who I'll talk about at the end here, they had the outline, the foundation, the bones to kind of tell a certain story, and they played it completely safe, and they were setting themselves up for a sequel. And I'll get to that a little bit later, but it felt like they were so focused on throwing everything at the audience to set up something in the future that may or may not happen, right? There's so much talk in this film about a certain aspect of Mortal Kombat that we all know in regards to a certain tournament, and I won't say how big of the tournament, the influence of the tournament is in this film, but I'll just say I was disappointed by the circumstances regarding the tournament. Again, it's a lot of build up in this movie, and the payoff doesn't always stick the landing. I enjoyed the characters that I mentioned up top: Kano, Sub-Zero, Liu Kang, Scorpion, all that stuff, but the majority of the cast for me and the majority of these characters felt so flat. They literally felt like character descriptions, and that was all we get from the characters. Like, literally, you can just read a 2-paragraph description about who Sonya is, who Jax is, and that's exactly what the film gives you. Nothing more, nothing less, which was unfortunate because there seemed to be something more that those characters could do, but they were just giving the bare minimum. I'm referring again to Sonya, Jack's story. I'm looking at characters like Lord Raiden. I'm looking at the villains of this film, Melina, and then their master, Shang Tsung. I felt like a lot of those characters were just there just to be in the film and not given more other than just being a character that you might be a fan of. I was unfortunately kind of let down by the fight choreography. There are some really good fights. Again, whenever Scorpion and Sub-Zero going hand in hand, Liu Kang has some really good fights, and there's some other good choreographed fights, but some of the fights felt clunky and felt very Hollywoodish. Like, I was hoping that I wasn't thinking it was going to be like the Raid type of action choreographed hand-to-hand combat, but I was hoping for a little bit more than just generic fights that we get within this film. And then, again, I mentioned how the film takes itself seriously. It's self-aware at times, but then there's a chunk in this film, like the second half, the end of the first half, it's like, where are we going with this? What's the plot going on? Why do we care about these characters? And I left this character out because I really wanted to talk about him because he was my least favorite character in the film, and that is Cole Young. Everything involving Cole Young, from his family, who, by the way, when you see the film, I don't want to spoil it, but he has a family, and for 90% of the film, I thought that the little girl was his sister, and then I thought it was his stepdaughter, but then again, just his whole situation, his whole origins, I don't know whose idea was it to give this movie an original character not from the video game, because they could have just used a particular character that there's a lot of characters that aren't in this movie that are set up for a sequel, but I don't get the point of Cole Young. I was not a fan. I like the actor, don't get me wrong. I thought all the actors did the best they could. I thought the script was the worst enemy of this film, but in particularly, Cole Young was a character I cared zero about. I did not care about his family. I did not care about his building of the character and his reveals, and again, the journey that the characters have to go on to find their inner powers. A lot of that stuff felt kind of underdeveloped, but in particularly, Cole Young is the worst character in this film, and I hate to say that because I know that they were building up the character. He's supposed to be the highlight of the film, but he just didn't work for me, and it's unfortunate, which brings me to the director of this film, Simon McQuoid, who this is his first big break. Unfortunately, you know, it's the narrative, like, you got to start somewhere, right? And sometimes you have first-time directors that get these big franchises and they knock it out of the park, and then you have other directors that just give you a fly-out single or a bunt or a strikeout, and I think Simon, unfortunately, was a strikeout for me. There was no flair. There was no, like, something unique to his sensibilities. I thought that he played it very kind of generic and very Hollywoodish in regards to just, there was so much that could have been done with this film. There could have been so much more dimensions, more complexities to the character, but it was just unfortunately just kind of very bland and very generic, and I also blame that on the script, which I found to be some of the most horrendous dialogue I've heard in a very long time. And again, I'm very aware of this film, is very self-aware of the circumstances and the characters and the video games and homages and the one-liners, but there is some dialogue in this film that just felt like cut from the cloth of like a very bad 90s film. And I know some people will say, well, hey, you remember Venom, how Venom was compared to a 90s film, a throwback to the 90s, and this film has some of that homage to the 90s, but it was just too much homage to just terrible dialogue that just was really bad writing. So there's other little nitpick things I didn't like, but mostly, like I said, Cole Young was terrible. The dialogue was bad. The script is kind of a mess. There is so much buildup to a sequel that may or may not happen. Again, this film focuses so much on the future rather than focusing on the present. I think that was a detriment to the film and the filmmakers. With that being said, overall, again, I applaud the film giving us a live action 2021 big budget, fun, action, brutal one-liners, video game homage with some really good characteristics. Like, again, I mentioned, I really enjoyed Kano. I really enjoyed Sub-Zero and Scorpion, and there are some moments I enjoyed, but unfortunately there are chunks of this movie that I found to be very disjointed, very misguided, bad direction, really kind of messy script. And again, I mentioned the characters that just felt very the characters felt like descriptions of themselves. And again, Cole Young, I don't want him in the sequel, but I know he's going to be a prominent character in the rest of this. So with that being said, it's unfortunate, but I'm going to give Mortal Kombat a 2.8 out of 5. Even though I'm not a fan of this film, I can see the potential of a sequel with hopefully a better director and a better writer, and also some characters that I was hoping to see in this film. But look, that's just my opinion. I know there's going to be people out there that's going to love this movie, that's going to appreciate everything that they have to offer. They're not going to care about the story or the characters. They just want to see brutal fights. They want to see fatalities. They want to see one-liners, and they're going to have a good time with it. But unfortunately for me, a lot of it just fell flat. But that's just my thoughts. I want to know your thoughts on the film once you've seen it. Your pros, your cons, your favorite characters, your least favorite characters. What do you want to see in a sequel? They set up a sequel, and, you know, we get certain characters that are alluded to in this film, so we'll see what happens with it. But again, let me know what you all thought of the film. As always, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell, that way you don't miss any of my other content. Thank you all for watching this review. Hope you're staying safe, and we'll see you on the next video.